Seen Fukushima in the news lately? Heard any radio information? Any radio stories, interviews about Fukushima? No. Seen it on CNN? No. Has it slowed any? No. It, in fact, is getting worse all the time. Worse and worse. I've got a story up there. It was on E&E News, one of the primary sources. It's not what it used to be, but it's still got a few stories. Heavily radioactive Fukushima food was found in the U.S. shortly after the disaster. No one here was told about it because the EPA says the levels were really far below anything we need to worry about. Of course, we know how they lied about everything. So that's one. You can see these stories right at the top center column. Fukushima remains the biggest catastrophe in recorded history. Japan is getting to be crazier. They're trying to force South Korea now to take their radioactive fish, which is kind of interesting. They are now saying that tritium, if it was recovered from the plant, Daiichi, could be used to propel automobiles. Talk about reaching for straws in the wind. It's wild. Take a look at the stories. Keep yourself up to date. No one else is going to do it. In mainstream media, this story doesn't exist anymore. Yoshi, can you hear me all right? We barely got you this time.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I can hear you fine on this side. Yeah, last week we had this. Satellites were down, I believe, because of those solar flares. Again, you read about the coming of the solar flares, but you probably didn't hear that. They probably shut down a lot of communication satellites to prevent damage to them.
You'd think that they would make an announcement about that.
You would think so. And I went to the two phone companies, and they both didn't know what was going on. Yeah, no one knew. It was just, I guess there's not that many international customers. And big corporations, they use trunk lines. They use, they don't just rely on satellites. They have access to cables that run through Australia. But the normal, cheapo phone companies, they just rely on the quickie satellites.
I see.
They were apparently all shut down because I did try to call you from this side. Nothing happened. So there's a lot of stuff that's very important to people, that doesn't get in the news. Like Yahoo U.S. often goes down on this side because of the disturbances in space from the solar flares ejected from the sun. And we picked them up in Hong Kong, places like that. But no one on that side, of course, the ocean knows what's happening. U.S. in many ways is a very insular country, So,
correct.
Most communications within the country. And whereas other parts of the world are more dependent on the U.S., U.S. markets and so on, and so are more sensitive. So, again, a lot of scientific fact that we need to know, we don't know, and are not informed of. And we have to pick through and try to discern, look at the science stories that no one really reads and try to figure out what happened.
Yeah.
As the Ebola case, and of course, it's Fukushima, this whole notion of, they just announced in very technical terms, the Tokyo Electric Power Company, that they're removing part of the covering from Reactor 1.
Yeah.
Now, Reactor 1 is covered by the giant
they're like squares.
Yeah, exactly. These vast, they're like these long pieces that stretch across and wrap the building. And they took one off the middle, opening up, let's say, one side in the top of the building, or two sides in the top of the building. Now, the purpose of the covering, if we recall, when they announced they were going to cover it, and we thought it was pretty crazy, was to contain the radioactive.
Well, that's what we were told. We were led to believe that releases. They were going to keep all the gases and emissions inside.
Exactly. Now they just, in like a 3-paragraph press release, tell us they removed the cover. Now, so we've seen a year's worth of buildup inside there released.
Where did it go?
Is that not a logical? Exactly. Exactly.
It's
now,
over here by now.
In the Pacific, on the other side of the Pacific, get any fair warning that, by the way, atmospheric radiation is going to skyrocket by thousands of times because we just opened up a covering over a reactor that's...
But not to worry, Yoshi, because they've raised the acceptable limits, remember, on orders of 20 to 27,000 times in some cases, depending on the radionuclide.
Yeah, well, you have to remember, workers could not get inside by any means into into that space without removing the cover. So,
Right.
we're way beyond any kind of limits there. It's vast amounts have been released. No discussion on how much was in there, what levels were inside, pressurization inside there. None of that. The isotope content, nothing. So we are in a very, very bad position, I think, in terms of information-wise, of not getting, and unfortunately, the information we're getting, very, very bad. Yeah,
We're not getting anything. Here's a story, Yoichi, and I've got it up there. A professor says Fukushima has destroyed our lives, and it can destroy history itself. It's very hard to imagine a future beyond Fukushima. It is so uncontainable. And the filmmaker said the meltdowns have opened up a fissure in time and space. The horror of radiation menaces the future is now in the present. And it just goes on and on. I mean, things, let me read a little bit what this guy says. His name is Anjalika Sagar. Things have gotten much worse, he says. And at the same time that things have gotten worse, you have an accelerated form of secrecy relating to the level of contamination in food products and in the ocean. We were interested in the politics of how disposable this population has now become. And that's very well said. Where the threat of earthquakes could possibly contaminate the whole of Japan, which has in fact happened. It could happen any day, any hour. Another guy said, we made a distinction between the nature of an accident and the nature of a catastrophe. The idea is that an accident is located in time and space. The earthquake and tsunami are a terrible, tragic instance, but they are accidents. The catastrophe is potentially unlimited in time and space. The meltdowns are a catastrophe that opened up a fissure in time and space, both in the past and in the present and in the future, so that what seems to be past is no longer past, but becomes present in a new way. And similarly, what hasn't happened yet is menaced by this moment we are living in now. The horror of inhabiting radiation is that it menaces the future in the present, and it makes the future hostile in the present.
Well, it's well said, it is one of these, Fukushima is a collapsing point of time in which we can review all the key elements, memories of the past, and projections of the future. It doesn't take a lot to extrapolate from Fukushima where we're heading to. A slew of stories, a slew of mentions have come out from scientists about the fact that the explosion that blew the lid off of reactor 3 was probably some sort of nuclear explosion, not a hydrogen gas explosion. And but 3.5 years on, it's just shocking that people who have even the rudiments of understanding of nuclear science won't mention the fact it was probably a fusion reaction driven by the release of hydrogen from tritium. Now, the company Curion, the water treatment company from Irvine, California, working at Fukushima, is trying to capture this free hydrogen that's released by tritium. Of course, this will take a lot of years because it's not just going to happen by itself. They're sitting. You put it in long tubes in the ground and sort of cap it and collect the hydrogen, use that for gas for hydrogen automobiles. Basically, these hydrogen fuel cells.
It seems
you convert the hydrogen back to water, and then you get fuel out of the process, energy out of the process.
It seems like a canard to me, just a joke. I mean, they've got proof that they can take regular tap water and crack it on the run and get hydrogen to propel a car. And what do you have to go to Fukushima Daiichi and try to collect it coming out of the ground with tubes? This is nuts.
Well, if you look at it this way, if you look at it, hundreds of thousands of dollars in fees from the Tokyo Electric Power Company, which usually comes from the taxpayer, to generate a few tens of thousands of dollars of hydrogen.
It's absurd.
And this will be declared gigantic success.
Yeah,
So,
I know.
yeah, of course it's absurd, but it's a boondoggle. Yeah, it's a boondoggle. Obviously, and it won't prevent, there's no safety guarantee for future explosions. Now, it just turned out there was a report released that the Japan Atomic Energy Corporation, they're the fuel company that makes uranium and acquires plutonium, reprocesses plutonium.
Right.
So they've been making secret plant in Suruga. I was out there the last time I was in Japan. Very to build roadways. There are very wide highways for there. And this is near the town called Obama. You remember there was a Japanese town that became very famous because it has the same name as the president when he got elected. Well, it's near that place. Very wide highways with a very scarce amount of traffic on the road. Obviously, to carry heavy equipment like rocket launchers, missile launchers, for example. You know, these are defense security highways. Tsuruga is also a mock fuel plant, just like Reactor 3 and Reactor 4 was being converted for. So this was back in 2009. So even that early on, planning was well underway for enrichment of already war-grade plutonium to higher grades for kind of a super plutonium bomb. And hydrogen, the released hydrogen from tritium is what triggers the bomb. And this is called a hydrogen bomb. So every mock reactor in the world, and there are many of them, there are dozens of them, is basically a controlled hydrogen bomb experiment, basically what it is. You got your hydrogen bombs in all the major countries of the world. So this is what we're up against. These revelations have just come out. And it seems that there's a split in the Japanese establishment now. With the fall of Mrs. Obuchi, Yuko Obuchi is the new Minister of Economics, who is in charge of watching over the nuclear plant. Why a woman? Why is she in charge? Well, her father was the one who merged Daiichi Kangyo and Yasuda Bank. Daiichi Kangyo was a Yakuza bank, and this is a bank that's the prime funder for the Tokyo Electric Power Company. The Tokyo Electric Power Company is very, very much linked with organized crime banking.